Alright, I like Ike. Lecture 16, Part 3. Switching over to foreign policy, we just finished Brown versus Board of Education a moment ago. Alright, so a new look in foreign policy. Alright, well, look at what's been going on here. Of course, we'd had this war in Korea, which probably didn't help our relations with the Soviet Union. But then some things will happen. Stalin eventually dies. I forget the exact year. It's not really important for our purposes because it's a U.S. History Survey class. But with the removal of Stalin, maybe some more moderate, moderate communists, but maybe not quite as edgy as Stalin, come on the scene. And remember, we were fighting this limited war in Korea, trying to trying to avoid World War III. But Eisenhower maybe is willing to take a little more hard edge with the Soviets. Okay, his Secretary of State is a guy named John Foster Dulles, Dulles, seen here on the slide. One way to remember this guy is Dulles International Airport near Washington, D.C. is named after him. So if you've ever flown through there on your way to Washington or as a hub somewhere, that's Dulles Airport. Okay. And what we started talking about, here's some ideas. Massive retaliation and liberation. What does this mean? Okay, massive retaliation. One of the things we're trying to do is make sure the Soviet Union doesn't invade Europe, the part of Europe they're not already in. A likely place would be West Germany, for instance. Massive retaliation is basically the idea that if you start something, we'll go nuclear. Okay, maybe that's not. There may be a few intermediate steps, but the idea is that we'll consider an attack on Europe as an attack on the United States, and we're not going to pussyfoot around. If you pull a knife, we're not going to pull another knife. We'll pull a gun. Okay, so it's a little harder edge way of looking at things. All right. Now we got that Korean War out of the way. Okay. Don't try to push us around. Well, I'm probably oversimplifying that, but you get the general idea. Okay. Liberation. Okay. Containment. Remember, the idea is to contain the spread of communism, which is a great idea, but what about countries that are already under the communist yoke? Countries in Eastern Europe, okay, that were invaded by the Soviets during World War II, but that's not helping them to contain them. So there's talk about maybe helping to liberate, some of these countries. This sounds really good, but in practice, it's kind of hard to pull off. Okay, one example of this would be the Hungarian Revolt. Okay, French Indochina. Well, I won't go into a lot of detail on French Indochina because we're going to talk about it later. Okay. So it's one of the things Eisenhower is dealing with is there's a situation in French Indochina, but I'll give you a quick rundown. After World War II, when the Japanese were evicted out of French Indochina, the French tried to regain control of their colony, but the indigenous peoples weren't really happy about having them come back, and this revolt breaks out against French rule, okay, in French Indochina. Okay. Now, the people revolting against the French are some of them, there's some communist ties there. And one of the things that Eisenhower has to deal with is we're willing to help the French to a point. Okay, but are we willing to put troops on the ground to help protect a French colony? Or preserve a French colony? The answer really is no. Okay, so I know it's a very quick run over, but we're going to run into this again in another couple of lectures, so we'll kind of just blow through it right now to get to the Hungarian Revolt. Now, in 1956, there's a revolt in Hungary, an uprising. Okay, and what happens is the Soviets respond, with military force and crush the uprising. Now, we're talking about wanting to help liberate countries. We have propaganda. There was something called Radio Free Europe. I don't remember when that started. But we would broadcast American news into behind the Iron Curtain where people could hear what we considered the real news. And they always talk about getting these countries out from under the thumb of the Soviets. But when it really comes down to it, there's not a lot we can do. I mean, Are we willing to parachute the 82nd Airborne into Hungary to help for rebels? No. So, I mean, it sounds good to talk about liberation, but it's harder to actually pull it off. Okay. Now things are complicated. Somewhere around this time, I don't remember the exact year right off the top of my head. I don't even normally mention it, but I'm in a different atmosphere and things are popping into my brain. Somewhere around this time, we exploded the first H bomb. Okay, so the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were powerful by any stretch of imagination. They were fission bombs. The H bomb is the hydrogen bomb. It's a fusion bomb. Basically, the H bomb is so big that the A bomb is the fuse to set off the H bomb. It's an order of magnitude more destructive. Okay, and Truman had started the development of the H bomb, and we build one, and so now the uptick in Cold War tensions is even a little higher. Okay, I mean, we start lobbing these things back and forth. We could wipe out the planet. There's actually, or wipe out life on the planet. The planet would probably still go on. There's actually a term for this. I'll write it down for you. All right. This term actually dates from like 1962, according to Wiki, and Wiki would never lie to us. But the concept predates 1962. They just didn't come full of a catchphrase. Okay, but the idea is mutual assured destruction. All right. The idea is that nobody should want to start World War III because, let's say, you launch nuclear bombs against country A, company B responds in kind. When all the smoke clears, there really is no winner. Both countries have basically been wiped out, which means it's supposed to be a reason not to launch a first strike. Don't launch a first strike because the last thing ever people are going to do before they're all dead is launch a retaliatory strike. So mutually assured destruction, like I said, actually it's a big term for the Cold War. We're not quite there yet. We're still talking about massive retaliation. If the Soviets were to invade Europe, we could respond at a measure higher. But you're working towards this. Mutual assured destruction, why it's just plain mad. Okay. And so, like I said, the term comes from 62. But as soon as you develop the H bomb, this starts getting really kind of scary. Let me see when we developed the H bomb. Hang on, I'll be right back. I'm back. I went and looked up the H bomb. So the first H bomb test was by the United States in 1951, but it was not a deployable weapon. It was built in a building, basically, on an island they blew up. First time they actually got something they could use as a weapon was 1954, which is probably why this triggered my mind. When I saw First Summit Conference Geneva 1955, this was probably floating in the back of my brain because I actually took a class on nuclear weapons. In fact, if you want to know more about H-bombs, the book to read is called Dark Sun, The Making of a Hydrogen Bomb by Richard Rhodes. Richard Rhodes, national bestseller. A lot of people want to know about making H-bombs, apparently. This is actually the follow-up book to this book, The Making of the Atomic Bomb. So this is about the Manhattan Project in World War II. And then this is about the H-bomb project in the post-war era. So I actually took a class where we read these books. Okay, because that's the kind of thing history majors do. Because we're crazy. All right. So apparently that crawled out of my, wormed its way out of my brain that, you start throwing around bombs that can, flatten cities. People start thinking, man, maybe we should try to avoid that. And so in 1955, we will see a summit conference, okay, where Eisenhower is going to go talk to the premier of the Soviet Union. That's kind of like the head guy, and Stalin's gone, okay. I think this is the first time the president has met face-to-face with the Soviet leader, probably since Potsdam. I'd be willing to, bet money on that. Sure, I mean, there's diplomats, they talk back and forth, envoys come to the White House, go to the Kremlin, etc., etc. But I'd be willing to bet, $5, but I won't, that this is the first time that the two head honchos have got together, like in 10 years since Potsdam. Right? So they're going to meet in Geneva, which is in Switzerland, which is a neutral country, right? Switzerland's always an unaligned country. They try not to take sides. They can hide behind the Alps and say, everyone just leave us alone. If you can get over the Alps and attack us, more power to you. So you go to Geneva, you can eat some chocolate, pick up a watch, put some money in your Swiss bank account, and meet with the other side. So this happens in 1955. Okay? Here's Eisenhower shaking hands with the Soviet Premier Nikolai Bulganin. I might be mispronouncing that because I don't speak Russian. To talk about things. Now, I'll leave the slide up for a second. Now, normally we don't like a lot of text on slides, but this one actually tells a story. It says, at the summit, President Eisenhower proposed a policy of open skies in which each side would be allowed to photograph the other without limitation. So here's the deal. Remember, the Soviets have been attacked twice in the first half of the 20th century by the Germans. Okay? The Americans, of course, had been attacked at Pearl Harbor by surprise by the Japanese. So everybody's big fear is like a sneak surprise attack. Okay? So what Eisenhower is basically proposing here is that each side allow reconnaissance aircraft from the other side to fly over their countries. Now, I don't know the specifics on this proposal. I don't know how well it was fleshed out. I don't know if it was like any time or just like maybe certain days each month. But American planes under this proposal could fly over the Soviet Union to make sure they're not amassing troops on the German border, okay, or lining up bombers getting ready to launch an attack, and then vice versa. The idea is to try to relieve some of the suspicion, okay. Like I said, I don't know how well fleshed out this proposal was because the Soviets want no part of it. The Soviets are always a very secretive group. They don't really want to talk about what they're doing, okay. So this proposal doesn't go anywhere. Now they probably came up with some common things they could work on. We'll sell you some wheat, or I mean, there's always things that come out of these summits just for the sake of getting something done. But you're not gonna solve the Cold War with the two guys sitting down and yakking. But maybe it's a little bit of a thawing in relations, just a smidgen. Okay, let's at least talk. Let's no one's really looking forward to World War III. Okay. So there's a famous quote. Some people attribute it to Albert Einstein, but I don't know that they can prove that he was the first one who said it, or he ever actually said it. Sometimes these things start, it's like a meme on the internet. Who started it, I don't know, but then you share it, someone credits it to you. But anyway, the quote is, I remember we're talking about H-bombs here. The quote is basically, I don't know what kind of weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV is going to be fought with sticks and stones. Because it'll be the end of civilization as we now know, and we'll be back to the Stone Age. Anyway, so Eisenhower meets with the Soviets in 1955 at Geneva. Maybe a little chip in the wall of the Cold War, but we got a long way to go here. Okay, let's see what's on the next slide. Taking 13. We're back. Computer was thinking. Got another slide going here. We're at 14:30. We'll better stop here and pick up in the next video with D and E.